Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Good morning.
Hey, nice shirt, man.
Thai
Thanks, man.
correspondent. Everything's being recorded right now, so don't say anything you don't want recorded.
Can I give us a pan down on that bad boy? Can we have a little look at that? Oh man,
Nice.
that's Songkran. That's Songkran ready. Andy Songkran ready.
Hey, look what I found.
The same size.
Ooh.
An old Lumpini shirt in my cupboard.
Ooh, all right.
Flexing hard today, boys.
I
Been a while.
can see by that shirt, you're really getting stuff out of the closet. It's great.
Well, if you
Anything else you want to get while you're in there?
Actually, I don't think you. Yeah. Anyway, I won't. It's okay.
Oh,
Basically, Songkran's fucked up shirt day. If you didn't know, so Hawaiian shirts are the go.
Anyhow, let's get started. We're doing a Q&A session today, are we?
we are, man.
Yeah.
We have some corkers.
Excuse that. There's going to be some animal noises in the background every now and again. Sorry.
Same in Kieran's background, but for totally different reasons.
Hey, who's flexing with the AIS shirt?
Oh yeah, you like that? Uni Rouge.
Dude.
Uni Rouge. Yeah. University World Championships. That was for that bad boy in
I remember that.
Hard Rock Cafe. That was a good tourney. Pretty sure half of those like Kazakhs and stuff didn't go to uni, but whatever. We'll just flow past that. They would.
Questioning the tertiary education levels of people in former Soviet countries.
Just the particular ones that I saw at the event. Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm not like sorry. Are you expecting me to be PC now? Are you, Si? Are you trying to throw that in there? We got some juicy questions, man. So we can't
ask all of them. They need to be addressed. Let's go.
All right. Okay.
We'll do a couple of them. I think we can do quite quickly. And lads, we'll start with you, Si. Big fights within Australia you think need to happen or would like to see?
One's obviously happening. George and Toby. Toby and Jake should happen. I don't know what it would look like, but it's just one of those fights that's been talked about forever. Chad Collins and Tyler, Chad Collins and Jordan Gottfredson. More locally, Keha Lee versus Ibrahim.
Okay, who?
Keha versus Ibi. Joanne versus Soraya.
Andrew, any that haven't been covered there? Big fight.
That's about it, man.
Oh, yeah?
Good. I don't know about the Jake and Toby one, man, but it's been talked about. So if they want to do it, they can do it.
Get it done. Or Jake and Charlie. It's always that little bit of bickering on social media.
Done that twice, man.
Yeah,
but
I think that's been squashed.
It's done. Dead horses flogged. Okay.
Yeah. No point for a third.
Moving on. Let's crack straight into a delicious one.
Delicious.
This one's juicy.
Are you in bed still, Si?
It's because it's where the snacks are.
Podcast at 5:30 in the morning.
Okay. Snack back under the bed.
Back on track, or we won't get through these.
Version cookies. This episode brought to you by Kuluchet, the official walnut biscuit snack of Iran. Let's go.
Okay.
Yeah. Eating a live one, Mozzies.
How would you handle a transgender woman wanting to fight girls as a promoter/trainer?
I've had two.
Approach.
Basically, in our state, it's not up to us. So whatever's on their birth register, we can't. Well, whatever's on their birth register is what the combat sports authorities say. And basically, if it's a girl identifying as a man and wants to fight another man, then they won't approve it, man.
Yep. Yeah. So
all right. Well, I'm gonna probably. I'm gonna annoy a lot of the same people that get annoyed at me anyway. First of all, I don't know what the regulations and registrations in Victoria are. Overarching, I think once a rule is put in place by government, like I couldn't just say, no, we're not doing it. Like it would be discrimination if that's the rule that comes in. But as a promoter and a matchmaker, it's not like it's a running race where you have to include someone if they nominate. It's an opponent has to be willing to fight them. So full disclosure, if someone comes in and they want to fight, and one of the girls with full disclosure knows their history and wants to fight them, then it's at the end of the day, it's up to them. And if it's a fair matchup, at the end of the day, it has to be put on. I don't have like everybody else. I think a lot of people have a real clear-cut thing. Like I know so many people that fucking treat women's sport like shit, and then all of a sudden they found this one thing that they want to be the protectors of women's sports. And I'm not saying some of the stuff that's happening right now is fair necessarily. I, unlike some of the people, don't know enough about the science of it. My gut feel is it's not fair with the current conditions. But long term, if they do more research and find ways to physically diminish their advantage, then it's not up to me to decide. But there'd be smarter people. But I just don't think it's as big an issue as in numbers wise globally as people are making it out to be. It just seems to be one of the 5 like ultra right wing stuff people really harp on about, and it's kind of filtering out through the rest of society. Current rules, I find it a bit bullshit from my limited understanding, but I'm not saying in the future if they put more knowledge and more stuff in it,
and I'm sure.
Sorry,
I was going to say, I'm sure we could also find, it's true, the example of, I mean, what you say is right. If there's rules around it, at the end of the day, there's rules around it. And a lot of the sanctioning bodies have them written in some of their rule sets too. Take like the WBC, for example, there is one at the end that it has to be their gender by birth. And until that rule is changed, it is the rule. And often, as a promoter, is it like the rules are the rules and it is what it is, whether it's the government, the sanctioning body, the this, the that. But on the flip side of what you're saying, Sai, I agree in that sometimes we focus on the example of the transgender athlete who's gone in and completely dominated. However, I'm sure if we looked, we could also go and find all the transgender athletes who did poorly against them as well. Like we focus always on the outlier. And I'm not necessarily going to take a stance for or against, but it can be frustrating sometimes when people own in. And like you say, Sai, suddenly we have all of these like ultra defenders of women's sport who similarly will talk down on women's sport. They're just using it as an angle to like puff out. So it's controversial, but yeah, there's rules and full disclosure. I mean, fuck, what's to say if the promoter wants to do it and both trainers want to do it and the government wants to do it and everyone all says yes, well then it's right.
And then even some more detail on that, I think we've had a female who wanted to fight as a man, or who identifies as a man, and I don't even know how to say it properly, but he was strong and everything and ready to go, but unfortunately that got declined. And then on the other side of that, female versus female, like I don't know much about the science either, but a lot of it has to do with when they transition, right? And the size of them and everything like that too. So I guess at a lighter weight would probably be an easier match to make, but at the heavier weights, it'd probably be a little bit more challenging down the track. But again, for us, like exactly like you, like we can't even fight for it. So I'm still fighting for hand wraps to be applied directly to the hands.
And I mean, you can take examples of times when genders have crossed over. Obviously, it happens in like the country of Thailand a lot with little kids, but then you also see, I mean, one of the greatest female Dutch kickboxers of all time, right? So she was 40-0, and then went and fought a male, and I think she was knocked out in the second round badly, right?
And then I think Jermaine Van whatever, good chick that fights in the UFC. I think she fought a bloke and starched him.
Yeah, so man, you can find examples everywhere. And I think we just go around in circles, but it's a good one.
Yeah, it is a good one.
It's a good topic. It's a good topic. This wasn't a question. It was a statement. Stop calling fights wars.
No, I'm okay with it.
Both ways.
If it's a war.
If it's a war. I understand when people go, it's not like going overseas and fighting for your country is a war. Like, relax. We're not
people who go, and I struggle with it. People who go, wrestling matches aren't fights. It's like, well, what qualifies as a fight? It's like put a Australia, like a US Muay Thai champion against the US wrestling champion and see who's spending the weekend in a hospital. So
okay.
Oh God, here we go.
elbow tap, underhook.
Where is the line between showmanship and being a dickhead for a Thai boxer?
Andrew's a dickhead in that shirt.
Andrew's getting in the spirit of Songkran, Sai.
The late great Jordan Coe, he was a showman. Definitely not a dickhead. He didn't belittle his opponents. He lifted the whole event up. It was fun. It was exciting for everyone. When you get someone who gets in the ring and isn't really fighting, it's just being a spoiler, belittling their opponent in the sport, calling people names and shit, they're a dickhead.
Andy?
Yeah, well, I guess there's a fine line between showmanship and being a dick, but so I pretty much captured it. Like I feel like we need a lot more showmanship and hype around what we do, because I feel like that's what's kind of holding us back in this day and age. And whether people agree with it or whether they don't, I think like guys who are active on and proactive on social media and are confident in what they say about themselves and what they can do, then I'm all for it. But yeah, exactly what Ty said. If it's on the other side of it,
I think we need dickheads as well.
Because you need villains, man.
We need. I mean, you take a lot of
shades. You need different shades in the thing. I you know that.
Look, it's not just all pink and blue. There's black in there, right? Wouldn't be as cool as
the thing that gets said at every Muay Thai show by the commentators. I probably said it too at the end of the fight when two people have fought and then they hug each other. It's like, oh, that's what Muay Thai is all about. I'm like, seriously, I didn't start Muay Thai training to learn to hug people. That was wrestling. But it's like, it's become this thing where like, it's become this kind of super bland thing where it doesn't matter if you win or lose. It doesn't matter this, and it doesn't matter. It's like something's got to matter and something's got to cause some excitement in it, because we love the sport and there's so many good sides of it, but people just don't, like, they have to actually give a fuck about winning.
Yeah.
And they have to give a fuck about having a, that's what, like, old school kickboxing in Melbourne, you'd have 6,000 people at a show, because the Greeks and the Turks or whatever it was, the back chat and stuff, like it caused that. And you'd get Gurkhan Oskan, borderline dickhead, borderline showman, but people would go, even Stan the Man, when he'd come out and do his like side splits and shit, you'd be like, it would pick it up. Whereas now it's like, it's great. Like, I love the people. And as a promoter, like, I like dealing with nice people, but fuck, there's no excitement around it. When that happens, you need a little something.
And sports is entertainment too, right? It doesn't, like, sport is entertainment.
And drama.
Yeah, you've got to have something else. I think a really good example of a sport that did it, that took a concept and produced entertainment from it really well, is when like Big Bash cricket came about, and they really focused on, and I never watched cricket. I'm not a cricket person, but when you look at the way that they like engage everyone and the entertainment factor, and they put so much into it, and the athletes themselves don't necessarily have it, but it shows it's like entertainment. They took a pretty boring game and got even more entertainment. And cool. Dickheads and sportsmen and everything, like, get them all.
Dude, on Saturday night when Jabba fought Jonathan Elu, it was a K1 match on Warriors Way. I don't care if you don't like K1, you have to watch it. Sickest fight. But when Jabba comes out, and like, he doesn't make a big thing of it, but he came out and he just stood there and he's like, Russian music's playing in the background. Like, man, I was commentating, I fucking got goosebumps. It was just like, Dude, like when Daddy Cool used to come out, like I'd just go, I'd love one fighter to have a good walkout song that would actually get the crowd going.
Yusuf did the same with Davey. 2 minutes to walk out, this slow build up of the song, walked out, stood there, looked menacing. It had a presence to it, controlling the game. So yes, agreed. Okay, moving on. This question got cut off, but they ended up messaging it to me. What should both amateurs and professionals do after a fight? So it was in relation to aftercare for a fight. So we talk a lot about like preparation leading up to a fight, whether it's weight cut, whether it's mindset and whatever. And then a lot of people tend to fight. And then that's when we as maybe trainers or promoters can lose the athletes a little bit, or they get tired, or they get, whatever, like the aftercare portion after a fight.
For me personally, so there's a couple of big things. So it depends on what the fight is, so how hard is, how banged up they are. But whether they're banged up or not, I generally like them not to come into the gym before Wednesday after the fight if it's a Saturday show. But I also don't like them to come in later than the following Monday, whether they're banged up or not. And the big thing in there is that, especially for the guys that tend to go off the rails a little bit, that after that week, if it becomes 2 weeks and then 3 weeks, and then next minute you're going to have to start all the way back to the beginning again for the fight prep. So whether it's just coming back in to show your face and have a move around or a skip or a chat, or even, just hanging out for the Wednesday and the Thursday, and that's fine. But I'd hope that by the following Monday, that they're back and at least moving around and coming in, 2, 3, 4 times a week maybe. But I think it's just so important to get back in pretty quick. Otherwise, you lose your momentum, and obviously like fitness and weight and things like that will come into it too.
And I think it's easy after a win, but sometimes it can be a bit harder after a loss.
Yeah.
And I like to
especially a big one.
Yeah, especially a big loss. And I like to have I like to tell people that when they have a loss and they can tend to always focus on the negative, that they have to, when they find a negative, have to find a positive to match it, or something that they did well, or some sort of highlight that they can take out. So it's 1-1 and it's even, so that the negativity doesn't completely drown them. I find that's a really good tool to deal with it, and not a positivity in the sense of overly happy. It can be realistic.
Yeah.
But, I did this well, or I applied that, or I tried really hard, even in the lead up. I was so consistent with practicing this, those kind of things. One positive for every negative.
Can I just say I hate that term?
I think the thing that kills me.
Every loss is a learn.
I hate that. Yeah, I fucking hate it too. It's stupid.
I think the thing that kills me is, like, with coming back to the gym wise, when people take 2 or 3 weeks off, it's like they come back for the next training camp. It's like you've had other guys at the gym help you with sparring and training and all that stuff. And I talk about the sparring, but they leave it off, and like the weight gain thing becomes such a massive issue. We had it at a point where I just said, if like, I'm not going to match you to compete if you're beyond like 5 kilos, like especially with like amateur boxing and stuff, or like the level of Muay Thai guys we used to have. It wasn't this thing. We wanted them when I'm cutting 10, 12 kilos off, and guys come back and they look like a whale. But also the other thing is, especially with a hard fight, guys coming back and going straight into like heavy sparring the week after, it's like, I don't think the head contact in a fight is as damaging as all the like heavy sparring. Sometimes people do, some gyms do a lot of heavy boxing sparring. Obviously at a boxing gym we do it. It's like your brain needs a little bit of recovery time. And if you've had a hard fight, man, go get a concussion test, because you just don't know. Like I was talking to Hammer about it recently the other day. He reckons, he said when he was fighting, if there was concussion test, like, and he knew better, he probably would have had one and found out that he shouldn't be fighting 6 weeks later. Yeah. But it's like, again, for most of these guys, it's not going to be a thing where it's going to set them up with $10 million and they're going to live off it. So if it means having a little bit of an easier time with their brains, if you've had a really hard fight and you're not, some people say, I don't feel quite right, go get it checked out. Don't leave it till.
Brain trauma's real, man. Don't let your girlfriend be tying your shoes in a decade.
I'm not wearing shirts like this.
That's the first step. That's the first signs of CTE. Is that shirt? When you
Next minute,
open
the
your closet,
chainsaw's
you
out.
go, that looks pretty good. I might wear that today. That's the first. That's the first sign of CTE. Okay. Moving on. When we sort of talked about this before, and so we can cover it again briefly because there's the government side. But when does a fighter turn pro, please? It's a hard one, isn't it? Because I feel as though there's a difference. There's a definition of a professional to us, and there's a definition of a professional to the government.
And there's a definition of a professional who
gets paid
on the non-person, the person who's not really involved in the sport. Like if, people who put I'm a professional Muay Thai fighter on their Instagram and they've, fought a 3-rounder for a few $100, like professional people think of it as this is your profession. Like the definition of a professional isn't that it's your full-time job, unfortunately, for where we are. But I don't know. It's up. I reckon it's up to the fighter. Some fighters' style doesn't suit amateur. Some fighters, their age, how long they've been training. There's guys who've been training, since they were 8 years old. They've just turned 18 and they've had 40 amateur fights. I don't think they should have another 40 amateur fights before they have a pro Muay Thai fight.
I'll go the other way and say, like, I think we've all spoken about this before offline, in that the type of fight and the rules dictate the style of fight. And in some respects, like you see guys who come out to Thailand, their first fight's a professional fight, they haven't fought back in Australia before. They're fully aware.
That's 3 interclub matches, by the way, Andrew.
I'm sorry, that's what it works out
in Thailand
on the scale, on the trading scale. That they're aware that they're about to fight for 3 minutes. They're aware that the fight's going to go for 5 rounds. So they're not always coming out and going guns blazing and fight to that style. So in some respects, I would like to see people turning pro a hell of a lot earlier so that they can actually fine tune their craft a little bit more, rather than just being out there having a bash for 2 minutes and out they go. And I think a lot of them would like to do it as well. I think in a lot of cases in our state, the trainers are the ones that are holding the fighters back.
Yeah.
The fighters want to do it. And a lot of the fighters don't want to fight in our state again without the headgear and with everything. Like I'm all for people just turning pro. If they want to do a development day, padded fight, whatever, 1, 2, 3, up to 5, and then go, all right, let's turn pro as a B grade guy with a pair of elbow pads on only, and then just send it 3-minute rounds. And then when you're good enough.
Yeah. I find that because it's easier in amateur and professional boxing when people turn pro, right? There's like a clearer line than what we have. And I always look at it like, apart from the government registration side of it, which, like, for all the Queenslanders watching, you guys are like it kind of helps us. So don't hate a combat sports board, but I sort of see it as, if you're really struggling to find the line, personally, I see it as you fight 3-minute rounds, you have no padding, and you're paid over a certain amount per round. Because, say, someone might have fight on roots, for example, right? So I might give them a bit of cash. There's no padding. They wouldn't call them a professional because they've only had 2 or 3 fights. I don't think so. So for me, I would say 3-minute rounds, no padding, over a certain amount per round. Where that line is, hard to say. But I mean, like it gets tricky, right? It's hard.
And to be honest, there isn't like
Stop giving up
the amount of amateur opportunities for people to develop a long amateur career, and there isn't really like, end of the day, if you can be a pro and go fight at IFMA padded Muay Thai. So if that's what you're wanting to do, if by some ridiculous miracle Muay Thai somehow does become an Olympic medal sport, that you'll still be able to do it when you turn pro.
Yeah.
So like, have a few amateur fights. Once you feel you're confident, you got it out of the way, jump into the pros.
Yeah.
Next.
All right. We've got someone here who says they're wanting to have a second fight, but they're feeling anxious and nervous. What's a oh, I think we've lost you there, Andy. I can't hear you.
Andrew. You muted yourself, Andrew.
Yeah, did you mute yourself? Yeah, you've muted yourself. You're
Unmuted. But man, there's over the car. Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going off here. Just jump back straight up on the horse, or in this case, straight back up on the motorbike.
Why?
The longer you wait, the harder it's going to be, man.
Yeah.
The longer you wait, the harder it's going to be.
Always good to know why they're feeling stressed and anxious. Like, did something actually bad happen, or did they have a bad experience? Like, people, sometimes they get stitched up by either a dodgy promoter or an incompetent coach. And if that's the reason, then if you've had a bad experience, I don't think you should jump back in it. But if it's the prep and all that sort of stuff, like Andy said, like rip it off like a Band-Aid and get straight back in. Yeah. But you know, for some people too, going back to the amateur pro thing, that we had a fighter that pulled out of 3 pro fights here, but would happily go and fight in a little country town in Thailand repeatedly. And I think he just couldn't deal with all the family and all the social media and everyone building that around it. So that's a different thing for someone like that. But I think you got to find out why you're anxious about it. If you've had a bad stitch-up experience, you got to get that sorted out, because you don't want to go in there. It'll become a self-fulfilling prophecy. From the minute you're in there, you'll feel like you're being stitched up again. You don't want to do that.
And if you have faith in your like coach and gym, you should feel nervous or anxious before you fight. Like, that's a completely normal to feel emotion. Another one, I think, on top of it is to not overhype the fact that you are fighting. Like, just treat it like any other sport. Treat it like you're going to, yeah, sure, fighting is serious. But if you build it up, like if you're just having your second fight, it's not this big, massive thing. Like, you're not playing big professional sport. Like you approach to another sport, and man, just like get in and do it. It just, and be anxious and be nervous. But if you build it up too high, like, I'm a fighter, this is fighting, and you're thinking of like Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor or your favorite Thai boxer or whoever, well, of course it's going to be nervous, but you're not expected to perform the same way. Just get in and do the sport.
But the other thing too is you got to be, 2 things people have to remember. If you have no feelings towards it, no excitement, anxiousness, anything, that's also not necessarily a good thing. You need to have Absolutely. A little bit of a stimulus there. And also, man, like the biggest, baddest fighters in the world, the most experienced competitors in the world get nervous and anxious just in a different way. And that's like a normal human thing. You're going into, end of the day, fighting, competing, playing anything, going to job interviews, an uncertain situation with an uncertain outcome. It's a normal human reaction to be nervous about it. Like, and if you're not, you're a fucking sociopath.
When was the last time you had a job interview, Si? What was your last job interview?
I don't think have I ever job interview?
You just walk in, I'm taking this job. You're hiring me. Shut up, Coach. All right, this is a good one. It's like sort of a sarcastic, slighted comment, in a bit of first person, but with the emoji, this emoji at the end of it. I want to fight for the title, but I want to pick my opponent. So what that person is saying is, what do we think of people who want to fight for a title, however, are then picking the opponent?
Well, like Floyd Mayweather and pretty much every mainstream professional boxing champion. I think that's unfortunately, it's bullshit. It should be, in an ideal world, it should be basic ranking and it should be the best 2 people. But at the same time, we know that happens, and we know that people time opponents and who they fight for. It tends to be if you're already a champion and you get to defend it. But if it's a vacant title and I've heard this before, we were offered 3 opponents and we picked this one because we like their style better. It's like, sorry.
Shouldn't be out.
A, this person's style is fucking better than yours. And B, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Like it can work that way, but unfortunately, I think people maybe have ticket revenue power behind them, so they get to be selective, and that shouldn't happen. Like it shouldn't in an ideal world, but it does most certainly happen.
Yep. Andy?
Yeah, same.
Same. Yeah, true. I think I think that's a good what you made about winning the title and defending the title. I like that. Like be the champion and then be the one who can call the shots. But if
sorry, go.
No, and then I was just saying, but if you're not the champion, who gets put in front of you, you have to fight them. You don't
That's cool.
That's
And I like guys that step up and go like what, and as a promoter, I even get it like where people are like, oh, actually, so-and-so's the best. Like, can I fight her or him or whatever it is? And I think that's awesome. That's the other side of it, which is really cool. So anyway.
We kind of covered. Is Sai a good food critic or not? Was one question that we have.
Matt Lucas. Matt Lucas. I know this is from you.
Yes, it is from Matt. Matt's actually got a couple in here.
You've gone to the worst and second worst states of Australia in your recent visit. When you come to Victoria, I will take you to a Melbourne food tour, and you got to trust a thicker gentleman when it comes to food choices.
He's a vegan, man.
A Persian restaurant, and then
stay in Sydney.
Okay. Okay, he's thrown a couple other questions in there. How much should fighters get paid? We've sort of covered that on some previous podcasts. Should pay be transparent?
Transparent between the fighter,
everyone knew what the person was getting paid.
100%. I think though, I'm happy to tell people what the going rate to start fighting is, but I don't think, like any other stuff, like it's someone's earnings. It's not up to it to be made public knowledge. And also some people don't understand why, let's say, a Toby Smith gets thousands of dollars, whereas they get like hundreds of dollars. They don't understand the scale and the reasoning and supply and demand.
Yeah, and this sort of builds into the next question, which was also from Matt, which was, should women or female fighters be paid the same as men?
So once again, should all male fighters be paid the same? Should a guy with 6 fights get paid the same as someone with 30 fights? No. Should someone with 30 fights who brings 500 supporters to a show get paid the same as someone with 30 fights who can't even sell 2 tickets? Think about it from the promotion side. As an entry level, as a base level, the males and the females should definitely get paid the same. No doubt about it. That shouldn't be an issue. As they go up, all other factors. So if you go by a base rate, the base rate should always be, doesn't matter, based on your fight experience. The extra part of it is your popularity and how much attention you bring to the show and how in demand you are. That's the free market model. And if you're a popular female who's had 20 fights, has a big supporter base, and you're a good fighter, you should of course get paid more than a bloke with 20 fights who nobody wants to watch fight.
And I think that's a good point. It's the same argument that sometimes comes up in, say, like women's basketball, and it's like, let's put aside male and female and let's look at the business. LeBron James is worth a fuckload more money to the economy of the NBA than his equivalent in the WNBA. And that's just like the business and the transparency. And on fighting is a perfect example. I mean, Diandra is one of my highest paid fighters in the gym. Female, like, has less fights than David, Max, Josh, but she's one of the highest paid by far. So especially in Thai boxing, a lot of my girls get paid more than the men, and vice versa. It comes down to exactly what you say. So it's the business of it, isn't it?
We do have to try and go a little bit and try to provide more opportunities, because it's hard matching a lot of women's fights. Like, I've got a bunch of girls I'm trying to match right now, and it's hard to match them because there isn't enough opponents. But part of me also thinks we do have to provide better opportunities, like having them further up the card, promoting them more to get more women involved in the sport. So we do have to do a little bit of it that way, but also the pool is a lot smaller. So being the best out of 1,000 people versus being the best out of 10 people, it does make it a bit harder. So that's the other side of it.
Do you know many females whose parents won't let them fight?
Whose parents won't let them fight? Not
But I also know blokes.
Personally, I
Sorry?
don't have that problem.
I know both.
I'll put a scenario to you. If a female's parents don't know that they fight, but so here's the knock-on effect, which I've found in the past as well, in that let's say because of work reasons or family reasons, they actually don't really want anyone to fight. They don't want people to know that they fight, so they're still fighting, but they're doing awesome, and then they're not being given the same amount of, I guess, coverage or opportunities because they don't sell as much as what they should. It's a real tricky one. Like I find that's
their choice.
That's a hard one, but unfortunately, like it's the sport we're in, and to be able to be given the opportunities, you need to help the promoter and size at it right. So.
That's their choice. If they know that the reality of it is that so long as you are like not going to advertise yourself and people don't know about you, you're not going to get the opportunities. And that would go for men or women, wouldn't it? Like there's not.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other side of it too is like, so I said it with about opportunities. It's easy for 3 men to sit here and say, let's just fucking pay everyone the same and they should be getting the same and whatever. But I mean, the other opportunities there. So if the girls don't have the fighter pool to deal with here, would a promoter, I mean, I know Sai would too, but would a normal promoter, your average promoter, be willing to fly someone in from overseas to take that fight because they don't have the opportunities here? Whereas a male would probably be more, you'd be more inclined to ship a male over to fight someone, right? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
I think it's starting to shift a little bit. And a good example was Nikki and Nicole and Benji's show on the weekend, which had the WBC world title. And they brought Celeste over from Thailand and had the national title between Joanne and Nakia, and then a full undercard of women only. And it was packed. And it was a sellout, and it was awesome. And I think it's, for me anyway, like personally, I think that I understand what you're saying, but then on the flip side of it as well, for me, females are exposed to even greater opportunities earlier because of the small pool if they can make a statement. Someone like Diandra is a perfect example. Like she's not had anywhere near as many fights as her male peers, but has gotten the opportunities quicker because of there being a smaller pool of competition.
True. Having said that, there's a lot of other stuff that happens, including like you watch with boxing and with the WBC still. When you like institutionally go, hey, the men are going to fight 12 3-minute rounds of boxing, but the girls are only going to do 10 2-minute rounds. And watching the WBC title fight, like those girls, Kim, Celeste, Joanne, Nakia, fucking awesome fighters. They fight 2-minute rounds with 2-minute rest breaks, where I've seen blokes fighting 3-minute rounds, like absolute donkeys who don't even have the fitness to get through. And I go, when at the top level you're doing that, you're already putting their sport down. It's like, I don't know why.
Is that still a thing?
They do 2-minute rounds with 2-minute rest break.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that would changed.
No, it's 2 and 2.
This is the number one reason I quit the sanctioning, because I didn't want to do that. And
that's a boxing thing, though, right? Like,
it comes from boxing, exactly. For the Muay Thai,
according to some, it's apparently the Sports Authority of Thailand. Even though the WMC does it differently, even though one championship does it differently.
IFMA have been fighting 3-minute rounds.
Of course, there's no reason.
For the WBC, it comes from the boxing. The 2-minute rule flows down from the boxing.
You should stop kneeing, kicking, and elbowing too.
That's not, but that's not, man. You've got the boxing organization that sits on top.
I understand that. I'm just saying, you have to. And I spoke to a former female fighter this week about it, and I said the girls should kick up a stink about it because there's absolutely no reason for that. I've got girls at my gym who are 10 times fitter than the blokes, and I couldn't say by the way. You guys, just imagine at training, you had 2 sets of timers. All right, girls, you guys are going to do the 2-minute rounds and you boys have to do the 3-minute rounds.
I've heard a comment before about protecting the women. So why aren't we protecting the men? But I mean, the thing that I had once is that we've from somebody was that they believe that the women shouldn't be fighting, and this is from an old person. So it's like, oh, we don't believe that women should be fighting 3-minute rounds because we need to protect them, and our job is to protect the fighter, and them not being able to handle themselves for 3 minutes.
I mean, but similarly as well, we have even some foreign gyms who still won't let women train in the main ring in the gym, even outside of Thailand, right? Like we still have issues.
Oh, there's boxing gyms in Sydney that just flat out won't let for religious reasons as well. Whether I agree or disagree with that, that's not me.
We still have those issues as well, right? But I feel like it's moving in a positive direction.
Yeah, we are.
Commenting on it at this point in time, what's to say that it won't, so long as we keep having these conversations and the ideas change a little bit, like hopefully. But perfect example. Both of my girls who fought on that show on the weekend were the only 3-minute rounds because I asked for it.
That was, so they were like non-sanctioned bouts. Is that how it kind of works?
WBC doesn't sanction shows, only titles. So that show on the weekend, the only official WBC fights, title fights. The rest of the show, obviously, because it's Queensland, doesn't require a sanction. There's just refs and judges. And so I said, the whole card was 2-minute rounds. My girls were the only 2 threes against Boy from Nuxu.
Oh, good on you.
I said they have to fight threes, and they said, yeah, and fine. And it was, man, and you watch it for my liking, and I had a few people come up to me that say they were the best fights on the night. No, sorry, with the exception of the
That's what we had to do with Diandra and Tiff. We had like a world title or whatever WBC title on, and then I wanted the girls to fight for the national title, but they couldn't do 3-minute rounds, and we just did it as a non-sanctioned belt. We did a rebellion belt because it was like it's a pro show. Everyone's fighting 3-minute rounds.
Yeah.
Cool.
That was a good one. That was a good one. All right. We have a bunch of sanction questions. I'm going to kind of like, a couple of them, not to get too, but this one is a good one. And I think we do see it in some parts of Australia, which is the full question says, fighting for a different sanctions world title after losing an Australian title, thoughts, no names, please, is the question.
I don't think you should get to fight for a national title coming off a loss. So whether you just fought for another sanctioning body or not, unless it's at a different weight class. But let's say, like as an example, Yolo fought at Yolo's lost, but then she went and fought for that title. There's 2 weight classes in between those 2 divisions. So there's an exception. But if you've just fought for an Australian title for one of the alphabets and you've lost, I don't see how in that same weight division you get to fight to be the Australian champion, especially when it's only like 3 or 6 months apart.
But they've got to remember there's a whole different level too, right? So a lot of people just think it goes state, national, world. Well, the general opinion should be once you've surpassed the national title level, you shouldn't be going back to that. Like it's you've passed the national.
Sam Solomon is.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so Sam Solomon is a former world boxing champion. He's had 60-something pro fights. He's just fought for a state boxing title, ANBF or something in Victoria, and now he's defending it again. Like,
I guess there's always exceptions to the rule, which is why in sanctioning body rule books and whatever, there should always be the exception, because depending on what's happening in the world at the time. But the general rule of thumb is that once you've competed at the world level, you shouldn't really be coming back to fight for a national title.
Yeah. So long as that quote unquote world level is actually world level, right? Meaning not a sanctioned quote unquote world title, which has just been put on for money. That's different.
Everything's put on for money, Kieran. He's put that shirt on for money. That's going to take our YouTube ad revenue from $3 an episode to $3.10.
Yeah.
I want to cut.
Onlyfans.com/the Rebellion Muay Thai Hour coming soon.
A Patreon page.
And it kind of goes into this one, which was fake titles or promoters setting up mismatched title fights for their own gym's gain.
Look, I think we get very negative on this, which is our thing. I think apparently we've covered these fake titles and the reason behind them and stuff plenty of times. That's the reality of it. If you don't like it, don't fight for them and don't go watch a show that puts them on.
Don't support.
Vote with your feet, vote with your money. Like, if a promoter's doing the thing that suits what you believe in, do it. And if you're a fighter, like one of my mates just commented on a matchup that was announced the other day involving a fighter I just mentioned, and he goes, how do you even take that fight? You know it's the wrong thing to do. So people, if you don't agree with it, just don't buy a ticket or don't fight for it. It's easy.
It's hard to say sometimes for fighters too. Like two of my best examples were Lyndon and Ibby, and I keep using them throughout the amateur ranks. They were by far the best at the time in their amateur ranks and never got the opportunity to fight for titles. If they were given one, they probably would have just jumped at the opportunity. And I think Ibby actually did one.
You know, title, how sexy is the new Roots Muay Thai Eliminator belt?
It's beautiful.
It's very hot. It's very hot. But that's the other side of it too, man. Like you've got guys who potentially should have been given opportunities and due to timing and all sorts of stuff in the past never got that chance. And if they got given it, you would just like jump at that, you know?
I think that one way of it is also to think about it is if you hold, and I've got no issue with people having a graded system at their gyms. And if it's something you're structured in and for what it is, as long as when you get like a orange singlet in Muay Thai, you don't believe that necessarily carries some weight in the rest of the world. It's a thing you've used to, and it's the same. Like you want to win a belt and go, I'm the champion of this. Yeah. Good luck to you. But just understand that others don't necessarily have to see that as what you're saying it is. Like if it's a tool used to market it or whatever, good luck to you.
Yeah, I'm going to save this one. We'll do this one. I think this is because it's a bigger one that we could probably go into a bit on the next episode, which is scoring differences between Thailand and Australia. So we'll save that because we'll talk forever on that. But PEDs in combat sports, performance enhancing drugs in combat sports.
Is this about promoters and how they get through a show or? Well, I have a particular, like, the thing with PEDs for me is like, I honestly think if I was an Olympic athlete that had a chance in hell of winning a medal, realistically, I reckon I'd probably be using it because I reckon that's the nature of the sport and it exists everywhere. Like you're almost going into a gunfight with a fucking water pistol otherwise. Like it's like, to me, Lance Armstrong's still the greatest cyclist of all time. You can give me as much EPO in the world as you can. I'm still can't even ride to my gym and back. So that's my opinion on that. Yeah. When it comes to someone being pumped full of EPO, like Shane Mosley got done for EPO, like the Balco Labs, when he got done, they looked at it. Having something like EPO that allows you to punch holes through someone for 36 minutes without dropping off, and testosterone and things on top of that, I think when it comes to sports where there's brain trauma involved, I really, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of contradictions in what I just said, but I just have real massive issues with that because I think that becomes a matter of life and death.
Yeah, that's very cool. I mean, it's even naive of me to say that there's less of it these days than there was back in the days that Si was talking about, because I do remember back in those days going to some fight shows and just looking at the guys who were just going, they look like bodybuilders. But I mean, that people are being smarter in their choice of drugs. The hard thing is the training, right? Like, you know how hard it is to train and back up and then train and then back up and the recovery and everything like that. And I just think that for people to be able to sidestep that. Same with muscle strip, for strippers, strippers.
Strippers?
You.
Strippers are getting on the
With weight cuts and then fully cycling it out so that they can cut to a certain weight and everything like that. Like, I don't know. But honestly, at the Muay Thai level, like we're talking about guys who are earning multi-million-dollar purses at a Muay Thai level at your average show, I think you're just a dick if you're going to be doing it anyway, to be honest. So if you want to do it, do it. Is it going to meet you? Is it going to make you any better? If your skill set's not good enough at that level, man, you're going to get beat anyway.
And I think that's not
Real talk though. How many people who glorify Thai boxing in the motherland do you think are in denial of how much actual, what we would consider PEDs go on in the Thai circuit? Like, I said it to someone the other day, like, oh my God, no. I'm like, what do you think? They're living off like...
the cart with sugary drinks at the end of the session isn't what's getting them through to the next one all the time. Like,
It's actually sad in some respects. A lot of them don't even know that they're doing it.
Yeah, and this is what I mean when people ask me about Thai boxing in Thailand, and it's like, guys, this is not, we get to do the sport because we want to and we choose to. A lot of the time in Thailand, it is what it is. And they're like race. So, man, I use the analogy of like racehorses. Like, if you had an unregulated racehorse industry, it's the exact same. I mean, even pre-fight fucking horsepower and stuff, but that's a different conversation. But it's the exact same because they're there to make, I mean, even college football in America, you hear stories and NFL in America of the way that linebackers will be absolutely smashed. And it's just like cortisone, this, bang, okay, go out again. It's the same thing to a less scientific level and a more just go and make more money. We got a big side bet. You can't fuck this up. Here you go, boom. Like, let's not be
talking about guys that have like been fighting, like the great ones. Look at Sancho, like he fought at the elite level for 15 years or something, and people don't understand that the elite level is just, there's a kick in it. There's literally a kick in it.
Unrelated topic. How good does Nong O look?
Juice and
yes. Cool. Nice one.
All right, let's get a couple more in before I have to go teach people how to bash your shot in the head.
All right. So
technically assisted. Chemically assisted.
Chemically assisted. Everyone.
There's a few questions about the differences between sanctioning bodies. We could sort of go between that. Okay, well, two more.
Okay, got it.
Finish on the most controversial. First of all, what do all you guys think is bad sparring etiquette?
Hey. I'm just saying, if this Hawaiian shirt wearing motherfucker starts bagging my countrymen.
Okay. The best, I'm gonna take a reel of it, and everybody knows it. The best rules around sparring is Chock will give them to you, man. Before every sparring class, you just robotically like, no tip the face, no spinning heel kick, no tip face, no elbow, no spinning back fist. It's so good, man. He says it every time. So,
you know, in Persian, no means many.
Many spinning back kicks, many elbows.
Many tip to the face, many elbow, many spinning heel kick.
Oh man, it's to be honest, it's covered a lot. Like, I think teeps to the face, spinning shit, elbows, you know, like kicking to the head. It's probably a good example, man. Like, you can kick someone in the head, but it's not like, in the end, it's about intent. That's my personal opinion. You can, like, Sai uses his countryman as an example. There's zero intent into what he does when he's sparring. But then you look at some guys who just carry on like douchebags and actually want to finish someone off or hurt them or whatever. And to me, that, like, you're not a team player if you're doing that, or you can't control your emotions. And if you can't control your emotions, then there's an issue with that when you're fighting as well, right? Like,
yeah. And
I think the number one thing for me is sparrings. There was a saying I heard, which is it's to get better, not to find out who's better. So guys come.
That's a good one, Si. Ooh, nice.
Nice.
Oh, hang on, let me write that.
It's going to be a PTJ on the Canva account right now. I think it's my couple of my pet hates is when people film sparring and put snippets of it on social media of them being a superstar. And I also think when people spar and they have it over someone, like, you know, you get people who can just, like, I remember there was a guy that used to train with us. He could, like, boxing, counter everyone's right hand with his left hook. He just set all the dummy new guys up with it. And he'd do it like 100 times. And I'm like, what are you getting out of this?
You can already do that.
Like, what do you, what, work on something you're really shit at. That's like a jiu-jitsu thing they do, which is really well, is if you go against someone who's, you're really good at being on top and you get someone less than you, you always make sure you go underneath. So you get to work your weakness and they work it up. And it's like sparring where it's like, you've obviously got it over someone in power or something, and you just dominate them for round after round after round. Like, it's just unproductive and stupid.
And I have this thing that I said a couple months ago to some of the guys, which was, if you're going to do something to someone who's a lower level than you in an egotistical, a forced way, it's also something that you have to be willing to do to the best person in the gym as well. So if you're going to try, I said to him, like, a perfect example, because Davey was standing next to me, and it was like, guys, if you're going to try and bash the snot out of that person just to be a bit of a dick, with a, like, however the approach is, you have to be willing to go, and I'll put you with Davey and you try the exact same thing.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
If you're scared to do it against him, you shouldn't do it against that person, because that's not fair.
I feel like I need to add something cool, but you guys pretty much, I can't.
Next question. Let's go, Lolo. I still got to drive to the gym.
Oh, got to go throw some water.
Cracking out his tie. Okay, last one, gentlemen. If we're going to cover it, it's to do it with harassment. Would we like to cover this question?
I get harassed all the time.
I sent it to you guys yesterday in the chat. Are we going to cover this one?
I think it goes back to something we say about our sports all the time, about professionalism in our sports. Some gyms want to charge money and run as a business, but they also want to behave like they're at a nightclub at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's not just in our sport. It happens in a lot of other sports. There was a massive thing with gymnastics and stuff in America.
Like, what's the question?
Sorry, the full question was, they wrote big one, as in this is a big one, dash, culture of sexual harassment in some gyms. So yes,
it's the culture. It's the same as any other
anywhere
workplace or anything else. Yeah. You gotta, like, A, it can be tolerated, but B, I think you just gotta remove yourself from that environment and report it if it's a reportable thing. It's like, you just can't put up with it. Like, and I know it's hard, like, because you're in it, but when there's a dominant culture in a gym, I think it's very hard for one person, especially if you're like the only chick at a gym or something, to try to, like, overpower that gym. But I think you got to put yourself in a safe position first, and then if it's been something done illegally, you've got to actually, like, report it.
Yeah, if you think I know it's hard.
That's what they're doing in a group environment that other people can see. What do you think they're doing behind closed doors?
Yeah. And there's quite an unfortunate example of it from, I don't know how long it was ago, but there was quite a prominent UK Muay Thai trainer by the name of Pele, who trained a lot of guys who own gyms now. And he was like a very, very good trainer, but no one talks about him anymore, really, because he's in jail as a convicted pedophile. And the unfortunate part was he was in a position of power as the head trainer and as the head coach. And it's, like, quite sad and sickening to hear of something like that, I think. But it's also naive to imagine that kind of stuff doesn't go on. And so I think it is important for people when something like, if someone does feel they are in that position of being harassed, and that can be in any way. This doesn't have to be sexual. It can be like mentally harassed or feel like
mental harassment.
Sorry. With the exception of if there's malicious intent behind it, you try to speak to someone, even if it's someone that doesn't know, like a mental health helpline, because they're often, it's anonymity and you're able to speak to someone. But I think that's the most important step, because if you try to hold it onto yourself, it can be bad in it.
I think one of the things that makes it sort of prevalent in sports and like a work environment, especially in like martial arts, is the whole instructor sort of like hero worship. They feel like as they got a black belt or something that they're like above the law, like Steven Seagal above the law. And sometimes like younger students and stuff look up to them too much, where it's like that abuse of power situation. And like that happens when people get people to do a bunch of shit for them at their gyms, or you can see instructors taking advantage of their students in a lot of ways. But I think that becomes especially dangerous when it's like, especially if you got like younger students and stuff who like think being a black belt in martial arts makes you some fucking higher level being, but they don't realize how many pieces of shit there are with black belts and crew ranks and all that sort of stuff. So I think, yeah, I think that's it's not a culture in the gym, it's culture in the whole wide world.
So that comes straight from the mouth of Dan Super Crew Sainaji.
So what were the two quotes for the day that we got to remember, Sai?
You're
Sparring.
there to get better, not find out who's better.
Get better, find out who's not better. And Kieran, be willing to do the beginner what you're willing to do to the advanced.
To the pro, to the advanced, yeah. And then, is anyone out there a bigger cunt than Sai in the Muay Thai industry? That comes from our friends at Sitsoton, from one Mr. Aram Diaz.
And since we're saying Aram's name, which one of your students proposed the last question?
Ah, nice.
All right, guys, I gotta go.
I do too.
Enjoy your day.
Not do. Bye.
See you guys.